Welcome to your once a month DLF2P video. Today we're not talking about the new box, even though I probably will be making a video on Snake Eyes because I think that deck is pretty cheap and I think it's pretty decent. Today we're talking about character duels because there is a huge change to character duels, which is they are removing two characters. They're removing Jack and Yuma entirely until they probably reintroduce it sometime later. And it will begin starting next month, and then they're gonna add two new characters instead, which are going to be Crow and Kaito. So today I think it's time to talk about what I think about character duels currently and what I think about this change, and definitely, as always, I want to know what you guys think as well. So tell me what you think in the comments. But basically, I have a few things that immediately come in mind when I saw this announcement. First of all, is that Konami clearly cares a lot about this format. They have made a lot of changes ever since the introduction of the format. It hasn't been around for that long, but they already have done so many things to this format to try to balance it already. So like they introduced new cards, they have new ban lists, and now they are completely removing characters, so clearly Konami cares about this format. They are making changes regularly and a lot more frequently than Speed or Rush, because those only get ban lists every time an event like a KC Cup ends. But character duels are getting a lot more frequent updates than those formats, which is a good thing to keep the format feeling fresh, because that's the only thing that's gonna give them new content, because there aren't gonna be like new boxes to introduce new cards and shake up the format. It's entirely up to those balancing updates or these like character rotations to kind of introduce new gameplay in an event like a format like character duels, basically. And the second thing is that from this change, they clearly know what decks are good, right? They definitely should have like player usage data to kind of tell which are the decks that perform the best. But in a player perspective, I do agree that these two decks are kind of like way too good for what they do in this format. So basically, if you're not familiar with the Jack and Yuma deck, I can pull up their decks quickly. So this is the grade 0 Yuma deck, and it is really strong, because you can probably tell that it's basically what tier 0 onomats are doing back when that deck was tier 0. It has a skill that just adds stuff to your hand. It's like onomato play, but instead of giving you the cards directly, it just adds a spell card that adds the cards instead. And it also gives you a free copy of Double or Nothing, but that's not the strongest part about this deck, even though this definitely makes the deck even better, because it allows you to basically punch over anything with your Utopia. The deck has really good consistency because of the skill. It has good draw power because of the draw spell. It has access to Hallow the Life Barrier, which is a really toxic card that basically guarantees that you don't lose for a turn, which is really strong in a low power format like character duels, where going second effect are a lot more common than going first interruption effects, because decks, the gameplay dynamic of decks is just basically you trying to dismantle your opponent's board when you go second, and then your opponent tries to do the same. And this basically lets you not die, and then you can just try to crack your opponent's board next turn. And they also have searchable removal in Gargoyle Bolt that pops anything. They have Gargoyle Revenge that lets them play through interruptions as well, because if they try to Book of Moon your stuff or pop your stuff, you can just use that to extend. And they have a lot of good extra deck options as well, including Malevolent Sin, obviously, to get rid of monsters, M7 as well. They have Utopia that gets really big with Double or Nothing, and as well as like Excalibur can do that as well. They have like Force Focus, which can counter some of the decks in the format that uses level 5 or higher monster effects. Overall, this deck is just super well rounded. It's good at everything, and it's people generally agree that this is by far the best deck in the format, and there is basically no argument of if this deck is the best deck or not, because everyone could probably agree that it is. So the other deck that got removed is the Jack Atlas deck, which is a deck that less people agree is strong, because pretty much everyone can agree that the Yuma deck is really, really powerful, everybody uses it, but Jack's deck is also really good as well. In my character tier list, I ranked this pretty much on the same level as Yuma's deck. Yuma's deck is probably a bit better overall, but this deck is not that far behind. This deck is really strong. So first, we should look at the skill, because the skill, again, just adds stuff to your hand. It gives you Resonator Core that adds a Resonator to your hand, and also Resonator Command that adds the non-tuner, so the skill just adds them both to your hand, just like, you know, the Automat skill that adds 2 monsters to your hand. So you basically have a guaranteed combo every time. The deck has access to a lot of generic stuff as well, like MST and Book of Moon and Fiendish Chain, and if you have grades for this deck, you can obviously put even more back row to supplement the deck, because the deck is already super consistent with the skill, so you can have more space to just jam all of these non-engine to make the deck even stronger. And the deck doesn't seem as broken as the Automat deck, but if you've played this deck before, you know how strong this deck is. So instead of trying to, like, in the Automat deck, there's so many options to like remove your opponent's stuff with M7 or the spell or the spider. This deck has Dark End Dragon, which is less easy to make than the rank 4s and 6 in the Automat deck, and the deck doesn't have like Utopia or Force Focus as like options for turn 1, but what this deck has is a lot of life point gain. And I talked about how Hallowed Life Barrier is such a good card in this format, right? Because it lets you survive a turn, so that on your next turn, decks are basically built to break boards instead of interrupting your opponent. So if as long as you survive, you can always try to destroy your opponent's setup on your next turn. This deck basically has a built-in way to make sure that they don't die. So instead of having cards like Hallowed Life Barrier, they just have Red Resonator, which gains you a lot of life points. So at minimum, it gains you 2100 because you target your own Red Rising Dragon as part of your combo, but sometimes you can even get up to 3000 or even 3500, which is way more than enough life points, plus like 3 to 4 defense position monsters on your field. That's basically guaranteed that you won't lose on your opponent's turn. And then in your next turn, you can kind of capitalize on the strong removal effect of Dark End Dragon to just send your opponent's stuff to the graveyard and then punch with these really huge synchro monsters that can pretty much beat over everything in this format. And that's not to mention, you know, the back row, generic back row that the deck can play. So this deck is definitely, I think, is clearly like the second best deck in the whole character duels format, and it's like leagues ahead of all of the other decks, and are basically in like the same level as Automat in terms of how good the deck is. So to put things into perspective, this is basically the deck that I have been playing myself in character duels. It's just a Cyber Dragon deck with the new Cyber Dragon Herds that they later added on to the card pool. And I added a whole bunch of processing to it, so I get more points at the end to get more rewards. But this deck basically aims to do one thing very well, which is to OTK through pretty much everything. So if you have like Fusion Gate, you can push through pretty much everything and deal a whole lot of damage just by making multiple fusion monsters in a turn. And if you go first, you just set Overflow, and then that can destroy whatever your opponent tries to do. And the skill just basically adds Cyber Dragons to your field so that you have material to fusion summon or to use a trap with. And that pretty much gives you a perspective, if you're not familiar with the format, of what a normal deck is able to do compared to what Automats or Resonators are doing. And the biggest difference is those decks, the good decks, pretty much are good at doing everything. So they have a skill that searches, which is something that only automats and resonators have, because all of the other decks don't have a consistency skill like that. They don't just add the combo pieces to your hand directly. A lot of times a lot of the other skills require you to have other stuff in your hand, like a Dark Magician skill. You need to like have the navigation and like the Cyber Dragon skill, needing to reveal a Cyber Dragon to summon the Proto Cyber Dragons, and even then the Proto Cyber Dragons don't do anything on their own, you know. But automats and resonators are really really strong in that their skills are just like on a completely different level than the other decks. And not only that, the deck itself has pretty much answers to every other deck. So there really isn't like a clear weakness on those the best two decks, because they pretty much have answers in their entire toolbox, like the Xyz monsters in Automat and the Synchro monsters in Resonators. They pretty much can deal with every other deck just by using their engine, which they have really consistent access because of their skill. And because of the skill grabbing anything, they can just play a whole bunch of non-engine to make their deck even stronger, right? So like a deck like Cyber Dragons, there really isn't a lot of space for non-engine. Like the only thing I'm playing is Cosmic Cyclone, partly because it triggers your skill by lowering your life points, but other than that, there really isn't a whole lot of macro space. But if you're playing a deck like Automat or Resonators, you can play up to like 9 generic back row, which is like a lot. That's like speed duel levels of non-engine. And that is what makes those two decks pretty much the best decks you can play in that format. And that is not good, because character duels are supposed to be basically a much more lower power format where people can use basically any deck and have a chance against every other deck. At least that's what it is. It looks to be when it is first made. But people quickly realize that decks like Automat are just like way better than all of the other decks, and there's really no reason if you want to win and get the rewards, because they are pretty good rewards for this format. And so people just all play Automats, and it becomes boring really really quickly. And it's not saying that other decks can't win, but if you want the highest win rate, there really is no reason to play anything other than Automats or like Resonators. So the third thing I want to talk about with this change is that this update shows that Konami is not afraid of completely deleting characters out of existence to balance the game, which is a good thing, because I think those two characters need a really big rework on what their decks are allowed to do to be able to fix the style that the deck is doing. Because the biggest thing that they probably need to change is the skill, because the skill adding anything to the hand is basically the main thing that makes those two decks leagues ahead of all of the other decks, because that allows them to do all sorts of crazy things without having to sacrifice consistency. And the other thing is basically they probably have to completely rethink the toolkit that those two decks have, because having access to basically answers against every single other deck, like M7 to remove stuff, and Malevolent Sin, and Dark End Dragon to send stuff, is a bit too strong when they are able to be made that easily, right? So like, for example, Junk Archer is basically Malevolent Sin for the Yusei deck, but this card is a lot less good in that deck just because it's so much more difficult to make than in Automats and Resonators, because in those two decks, their monsters can be made with pretty much any starter, which they can just add to their hand with a skill. But in Yusei's deck specifically, you have to open Junk, not Junk, the level 5 tuner, this guy, Quick Draw Synchron. to be able to reliably make Junk Archer. That's like the normal way you make that guy is by using the special summon effect of Quick Draw Synchron and then revive the Hedgehog, and then you make the Junk Archer to delete a monster from the field, right? That relies on you having to draw the Quick Draw Synchron or search it with the free copies of Tuning, but that's only 6 cards in a deck compared to basically anything that the Automat deck can draw that gets them to full combo. And also, like, Quick Draw Synchron needs a discard, so it's inherently less good. So, decks like Automat and Resonations definitely have a problem with, like, power scaling in terms of that. And so I think they did a pretty good decision to basically just put them away and figure out a way to balance the deck before they put them back, because that's much more better than them just making more limits and then the limits don't do enough because of the skill still being too broken, or maybe they because the thing about character duels is that the decks are pre-made, so they can't really like limit the cards too much, because that will make the deck the starting deck not work. So I think that makes the most sense. So I think that decision is pretty good. And finally, I want to talk about the implications of rotation, because by the looks of things from this update, we can basically tell that that is the main way that this event, or this format rather, would be getting updates is from rotation. It's like they're going to remove characters, and then they're going to introduce new decks with new playstyles, and then that would be the main way to introduce new gameplay into the character duel format. And that I think is a good thing, because again, the format doesn't really have a way to shake up the meta meaningfully without completely adding new decks. Like, people expect new decks to be added, but the fact that they're also removing decks at the same time is really good, because that doesn't overwhelm the format with way too many decks. It's also just better for them to manage in terms of like power level. They don't have to like worry about too many decks being roughly at the same power level, because like the direction I think that they're taking with this format is that every deck basically has a chance to win against every other deck. At least that's like the ideal scenario, is that every deck has a chance to win. And if they have too many decks, they can't really feasibly do that. So basically just taking away the best performing decks and introducing newer playstyles is, I think, probably the best thing that they could do. I don't think I can think of like another way that they could do that better. So I personally, I'm pretty happy with the direction that they're taking character duels. And we actually have the decks of the new characters right now already, so let's have a look at that. If we look at the update in here, we can already see that they already have a full list of all the new cards that they're going to add as part of the new character decks. So we can basically have a feel of what the new decks are going to do. We don't exactly know what the skills will do, but we already have the card list, so we can basically picture what the new decks are going to do. And also, these two decks have been meta at some point in speed duels as well, and that can also be a good reference point on what those decks will probably bring to character duels as well. So Blackwing has been meta at some point when they released Simoon and Gale, the Whirlwind, plus all the other stuff as well, like Zephyros the Elite. So that deck is a Synchro Spam deck, but it is a deck that's good going second. It doesn't really do anything going first, which is a playstyle that fits right into character duels, because that's what all the decks do. And the deck itself isn't too broken in terms of consistency, because they need to draw exactly Simoon or Whirlwind, and then that's what gets them the other stuff. And they have to draw that alongside a high attack monster to be able to actually search good stuff. So they have to draw that alongside like most of the time one of the level 4s like Bora or Zephyros the Elite. And then that usually gets them Gale the Whirlwind, and then that makes them a level 7 synchro, and then you can bounce it back with Zephyros, bounce that Whirlwind back with Zephyros, activate it again, and then Black Whirlwind is not once per turn, and it happens every time you normal summon, so if you start with Simoon, which normal summons itself, you get another search, and then you can synchro summon a second time, and then you can make multiple, usually it's the level 7 synchros that they make, which are the R rarity monsters, but I'm not seeing the other level 7 synchros that they usually make, because usually the strategy revolves around making the other level 7 synchro that pop stuff on the field, and that's what basically makes a deck really, really strong going second when they were meta in speed duel, but I'm not seeing it here, which is a good thing because that pretty much means that they learned from the mistakes of Resonators, because that's basically just Dark End Dragon, but you can pop multiple stuff as well. So instead of relying on the pop, the deck is basically going to rely on Gale the Whirlwind to have your opponent's monsters attack and then just beat over them by battle, which is fine in that format. And Armor Master has a pretty annoying protection effect, but I think it's fine in this format because I think enough decks have ways to get rid of it without going to battle, because like decks like Neos aren't even that good already, and you can't really beat over Brave Neos by battle because of Necro Gardener negating attacks and it having a protection. So it's probably not going to be too different to Brave Neos being a guy that's difficult to beat over, but decks will probably still have outs to that. But not super happy with Blackwing Armor Master, but I think it's probably going to be fine. And yeah, that's pretty much the main gameplay that the Blackwing deck is going to be, which is basically just going to be activating Gale the Whirlwind to have your opponent's monsters attack and just beating over them, which is fine. It's a good playstyle, and depending on how good the skill is, they may also have some space for generic stuff as well, depending on if the skill gives them consistency or not. But a lot of that will have to depend on what the skill actually does. And the thing that I'm more excited about is Photon, because Photon, back when the deck was first released, is a pretty low-powered and fair deck. So what the deck does is they summon 2 level 4s, they make Galaxion, they summon a Galaxy Eyes Photon Dragon from the deck, then they use the skill to add the Quick Play spell to their hand, and then that's 1 interruption. That's 2 level 4s for 1 banish. And that level of power is perfectly fine in character duels, and I think I'm really glad to see like a deck like that being added, because that's pretty much like the playstyle of Dark Magician or Cyber Dragon, in which they have like a in-engine way to add a card removal quick effect to their hand, and then they can just use that to control the field. So this is basically just doing that as well, and that also has to depend on if the skill adds the Photon Stream of Destruction to your hand, because as of now we don't actually know. At least I don't think we know what the skill actually does, but I have a high, I have a big feeling that it's going to be similar to the Galaxy Photon skill that the deck previously had. Just like a lot of the skills in character duels are like remodified versions of the skills of the decks back when they were meta like 5 years ago. So this is probably going to be the same, in that it's going to be like reveal a Galaxy or Photon and then add Photon Stream of Destruction to your hand, something like that. And if that's the case, then the deck is going to be functioning pretty similar to the deck back when it first came out. It's gonna be ranked 4 strategy, but unlike Onomats, it's gonna revolve around interruption rather than trying to break your opponent's board because you search a quick play spell. And also, by the looks of things, we also have Hyper Galaxy, which is another quick play spell that the deck previously did not have because it was too strong. Like, fun fact, the deck Hyper Galaxy was meant to be like a second wave of support for Photon Dragons back when the deck first came out in Duel Links, but they changed it last minute because they probably thought that the card was too strong and they changed it to something completely different. And now we get to play the deck with Hyper Galaxy. I don't know if it's going to be included in the starter deck, but at least it's going to be available, which is going to be pretty interesting. I don't know if the skill will be able to search it, but even if it doesn't, it's still really, really strong. And there's also like a whole bunch of other stuff. But the main playstyle is probably just going to be rank 4, making Galaxion, summoning Photon Dragon, and then the skill probably adds to quick play. And there's also like a whole bunch of other random stuff that they added to the pool as well. More hero buff, which is fine, and more shark buffs. So these two decks aren't particularly strong right now, so it's understandable. I hope they would add even more Red Eye stuff, because I still feel like Red Eyes is the worst out of all the decks available, but, you know, can't complain too much. They already got a lot of stuff since the beginning of Character Duels. So that's basically it. I'm overall really, really happy of what they're doing with Character Duels. I really like the direction that they're going, adding more characters, and judging by the card pool, I think their power level will be acceptable, even though I don't know what the skill will do. Hopefully the skill isn't too broken. And them removing the strongest decks in the format is also really, really good. I think that's a really good change, a really good direction that they're indicating that the format will go. So they limit the amount of decks so it doesn't get too overwhelming for both the players. Are probably gonna be playing the format just trying to have fun, or like new players just trying to have like a character deck to play, and they won't be too overwhelmed by too many characters. And also pretty good for the balancing team as well, to make sure that all the decks are around the same power level. Also make sure that they can properly playtest these decks before they put them back into rotation, if they ever do that in the future. And really glad that they're really doing so many changes in such a short period of time for this format. And I really like that. So yeah, tell me what you think. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.